How's it going, everyone? This is DJ Aceman along with the legendary Life of Big Don here today for the Peace and Chaos program. What's going on, Big Don?
Nothing much. The political world is ending right now as we're recording, but we're here to talk about a big subject right now. Of course, that's going to be the Senate runoff that happened in Georgia. We're going to get right into the details, and we have all the analysis for you here on the Peace and Chaos program. So, PJ, let's go get right into it.
Yes, let's get right into it right here. So this is the Raphael Warnock and the Kelly Leffler race. So this was one of the big races along with the Perdue Ossoff race. So a little heads up here. Raphael Warnock, he's a reverend from the Ebenezer Baptist Church, and he did defeat incumbent Senator Kelly Leffler. And just looking at it right here, you could actually see, looking at both races here, Purdue and Ossoff was actually a lot more closer. It was only determined by 1 point, while the Leffler Warnock race was determined by nearly 2 points. It was about 1.9 points exactly. But if you can look here at the vote history for this seat between Warnock and Leffler, I mean, it's not even close, to be honest. Like, Republicans won by 18 points in 2004. 2010, they won by 20 points. And then in 2016, they won by 14. So 4 years later, what went wrong with the party, with the Republican Party? And that's what we're going to discuss today. So,
Right.
Big Don, I know you have some thoughts on Kelly Leffler, and I just want to hear what they are right off the bat.
Well, if you guys didn't know or forgot, Kelly Leffler was part of some news before we went into lockdown, as she was involved in some insider trading scandals that happened before because people within Washington knew what was going to happen to with COVID, and then she got bought into her stocks there, or she sold some off, and as far as I'm aware, I think that's how it goes. But she was involved in an insider trading scandal allegedly, so I think that's kind of what pushed her back with her campaign there. But in terms of this overall election, I think the big thing here is a lot of people in Georgia, since they selected Biden, and this is for both Warnock and Ossoff. I think the big reason here is they know, since they selected Biden, they knew the urgency of getting the majority in the Senate. They
Mhm.
knew they knew if the Republican those Georgia voters, especially the early Georgia voters, because since Democrats are a lot more likely to vote early, they knew they had to get their votes in, and they in order to have a really successful campaign with Joe Biden. Not that they kind of sealed their fate with that election. So it gives them another opportunity to say, hey, here's how we want our future to be decided. Maybe some votes have changed because of that, because now Georgians realize that, hey, Biden's the one in office now, or Republicans are. There's a lot of controversy there, especially when it comes to voter fraud and stuff like that. But we could talk more about that. PJ, what are your thoughts on that?
You know, I think it was kind of right on. I think that, well, one of the things was that Georgia did go blue this election. So I think that in that regard, Georgia was, it was looking like it was going to go down blue again. However, back in the first election, the first November 3rd election, if we look here at the Purdue Ossoff race, I mean, it was actually kind of close the first one. I think Purdue, he was leading in it. He was actually almost there. Like, if you see here, 49.7 to 47.9. So at first, I was kind of skeptic about this.
Right, so was I.
I was kind of skeptic. I was like, maybe the Republicans come out, but maybe they don't. But personally, after kind of the whole legal battles that were going on in different states after the presidential election and calls of voter fraud, I didn't really think that was a great idea by President Trump or the Republicans. And I think that really hurt Purdue and Leffler seriously. It really hurt them. Also, I think Leffler and Purdue, to a certain degree, also were hurt by the stagnation of the $2,000 stimulus checks.
Right.
I think that really hurt them because, I mean, Warnock and Ossoff made really good campaign statements when they said, well, look, if we were in the Senate right now, those would have already came out. And it kind of exposed how the Senate was not working well. And they were trying to expose the gridlock. So I think that a lot of things you could say, like even COVID-19, the insider stock trading was a big one. Also, the President Trump versus their governor, they were in a sticky situation. And I really think those were off putting for them. And that really hurt them both in the end. And that's why you have here Purdue. I mean, you have Purdue and Leffler losing. So let's go look at the results right here on this map. So this is the Georgia U.S. Senate results with the county map. So what ended up happening basically in both races were, if you watched it on election night, it was basically going back and forth. It was actually a really tight contest. But DeKalb County here, right in Greater Atlanta, which actually has a ton of people who voted, nearly over 400,000, yeah, 300,050 people voted, or just about, in DeKalb County, and it went majorly for Democrats. They hit the bank 84%, nearly 85% for both candidates. And it really showed that right there was a big win for them. Also, when you look at it, on this map, you can see that they won in the big cities as well. Athens, Georgia, 71% for Warnock here. Columbus, right in Muskogee County,
Right.
63%. You know, you see Savannah, that's in Chatham County, 59%. That was a little closer. But look, Augusta, 69.5%, and Mac
Eh,
Macomb and Bibb County, 62%. And you see that right there. That was really big in this election as well. The Democrats won the big cities. In the suburbs, it was the battle of the suburbs again.
Yeah,
And
as we could see outside of Atlanta,
yeah,
the whole entire area is blue.
yep. Look at right here. You have Cobb County here, 56% for Warnock. Fulton County is where Atlanta's in. This one was 72%. So, I mean, when you look at this and you say, well, this is where the Republicans really needed to slash those numbers. If they got maybe 35% in Fulton County, you know, you look here at DeKalb County, if they could get 20% there, if they maybe hit 35, 40% in Douglas County, I mean, they could have possibly walked away with this barely. But again, it's those suburban white women voters who really determined this election. So, Big Don, what do you think about the results here in this Leffler Warnock race?
Well, let's see here. Well, I actually do want to ask you a question here.
Yeah.
Do you think the call Trump made to Georgia's Secretary of State made a big impact on the election results?
Yes, because that call was literally like, you know how they have October surprises in the presidential election?
Yes.
This was something that everyone remembered because it was literally just a couple days before they went out and voted. And I
Right.
think that right there is like the October surprise in the way that, I mean, if you look at the one that kind of got Trump, that made him win with the whole email scandal and everything else, I mean, that was pretty big. And then, I mean, this election, the October surprise this time around for the presidential election was him getting COVID. So, I mean, this one was something where people do forget about the news cycle, but this was straight and fresh in everyone's heads. And I think that maybe people who are on the fence, like independents who uh, narrowly broke for Democrats 52% in the CNN exit poll, that showed that maybe some people who were undecided at the time tip the scale, and especially in a tight race like these two, I mean, that really, I think in my opinion, that was a big thing. Maybe it wasn't the biggest, maybe people already had ideas of who they were gonna vote for, but I think right then and there, people were maybe concerned that that was an attack on democracy, and therefore they decided to vote Democrat because of that.
Absolutely. Even though most Democrats, even though there's a huge early voting turnout in Georgia, I would s- I would say that's still a significant factor in how people decided to go to the polls now. Of course,
Mhm.
because of course now they have this image of like, okay, this is what the Republican Party is slowly starting to turn into. Trump's trying to dig up as much voter fraud as possible. So it probably gives them a sort of bad image on the incumbent candidates for the Republican Party. With that being said, I think the funding, of course, there was record funding going towards both candidates in this during these Senate races. I think the big thing here is minority votes. If we look at minority votes for Democrats, it's around. I've even seen some in the 90 percentile.
Yeah. Yeah, there was it's I think it's around 85, 90%, and that's really key,
Yeah, that's huge.
especially in Georgia where they have a lot of see non-white population in Georgia. It's one of the most diverse states, 47% here for minorities. So that's Hispanics, Native Americans, blacks, Asians, mixed race people. And that's a really big statistic. That's nearly half of the electorate. So when you think of that, And you especially think of it where in the more urban areas where there's a lot more minorities living there, the Democrats are going to have a big advantage there. And that was a great point by you about that because you see that white Georgia when it was a little maybe like 20 years ago, the demographics were a lot different, but now they're shifting. You know, you have immigrants moving in to the state of Georgia and also to different states in the South in the Sun Belt. And because of that, that's going to change the electorate for future elections.
Right. And it's definitely going to be interesting to see how Republicans cater more towards changing demographics, especially if more sort of urban or even some rural areas, if they start becoming more diverse. Well, how will Republicans in these giant swing states, they're even turning into swing states. Let's not forget, not too long ago, Georgia was a pretty strong red state.
Yep.
But
Look
now
at
we're
right here. President. Look, I
plus
mean,
eight.
+8, +5. I mean, +8, that's a big
Yeah,
win. And that was during
that's
President
for
Obama.
and that's for Romney and McCain.
And this one was +5
Like,
here for 2016 for Trump. And it just got lighter there, and then Biden was able to flip it this year.
yeah, so I think I think that's gonna be it's definitely gonna be something close to look out on, especially with the upcoming midterms. Of course, the Senate is pretty much locked at this point. It's actually going to be. We'll talk more about what to expect with the Democratic majority of the Senate, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens in the midterms in terms of how some states flip. I think we're going to see a lot more southern states, like for example, maybe North Carolina. I'm not sure. Maybe like Kentucky.
Florida, I think
Maybe
Florida.
Florida's
Florida
always been kind of a swing
Florida's a
state.
swing, but, it kinda has been
Maybe
going a little bit
Texas.
more red. Texas, I think 2024 will see that most likely be determined by within, 2 points, maybe,
Right. Mhm.
being generous here, 2 points. If Democrats win, they'll win by maybe around this margin here, 1 point to 1.5 points. It's because there's a lot. And I mean, Texas has more they're gonna have more they're gonna have, I think, 41 now. So, it's gonna change a lot. So Texas is gonna be one of those states where, it's gonna be definitely key for, let's say, the Republicans need to keep Texas in order to even have a shot in the Electoral College. If they lose that, they are absolute toast.
Yeah. So going forward, let's. What does this mean for the Senate? As we know, with the Democrats now controlling the majority, of course, Kamala Harris now has the final say in what gets passed via the House. Chuck Schumer will become the Senate Majority Leader. I even heard that Bernie might be might be the head of the Budgetary Committee, so
Mm,
that could be interesting to see what kind of progressive policies get passed during the next 4 years of the Biden
mhm.
administration. But I want to get your general thoughts on like, okay, what could this mean for the country moving forward, and how, especially with the next 2 years during the when we're going to be doing another midterm cycle.
Well, I think first of all, I mean, with a split Senate, Republicans are kind of have their backs against the wall. They were assuming that they could have pulled off maybe one of these two races. And I think that since they lost both seats, now they're kind of screwed and they kind of have to play along with transparency here because they can't do a lot. They can't really stop a lot of the things that President-elect Biden wants to accomplish. So now Democrats are in control. I think we're going to expect a lot of progressive policies. Maybe not immediately because right now this political environment is super toxic. I think if they try doing it right off the bat, they might send off a bad message and things could get a lot worse. But I think, I don't know, maybe in a couple months they're going to start doing some more progressive things. But knowing Biden, he's not really a progressive like Bernie per se or
Yeah,
AOC. So I think that he might, I don't know. I don't really think we're going to see as much a lot of progressive things like expanding Medicare right off the bat. But I think we're going to see a lot more things that will get passed. But I think that there'll be kind of more of reforms that kind of do with do a lot of reversals of what Trump has already passed that
right.
Democrats have not liked. So I think we're going to see that first. So it's going to be a lot of undoing, but if you're Republicans right now, you're going to have to do some transparency here. You know, your votes, it's going to be a tie every time. And President of the Senate, Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, she's going to have the deciding vote every time, unless You can get Angus Kane, who's an independent, but he's more liberal, and you could even get Steve Mnuchin. I mean, not Steve, no Manchin, Senator Manchin. My bad, last name kind of similar. But if you can get Senator Manchin on your side as well, so Republicans kind of are in a tough situation. But if they can actually get Manchin, Joe Manchin, to be with them, because he even said it recently. He votes, I think, with President Trump around 40 something percent of the time. He's the most conservative Democrat in the Senate.
Right, and then obviously you got the Libertarian Center from Maine.
Yep. I mean,
But
you could get them to maybe break a couple times, and that could help you for the next couple years. But I don't know. Other than that, I mean, the Republicans are they're in a bad position now. They could have won at least one of these two races.
yeah, absolutely.
You know, they're in a tough situation. Democrats are in a really good place right now. They can do whatever they want. They have control of the Senate. They can break ties unless a couple of their more conservative senators do break with the party, because they might view that, I don't know, as being they might view that as being a little too progressive for the moment. So that right there is, I think, the main issue in the Senate for the Republicans and Democrats. So
Right,
I think
it's definitely going to be a huge balancing act moving forward in terms of okay, who's 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 going to be with me and who's not going to be with me in terms of
exactly,
both parties here.
exactly.
But yeah, do you want to talk about any of the races in particular?
Yeah, let's go ahead and look at this Ossoff Purdue race. So we just touched on a little bit of the Warnock Leffler race. That was determined by 1.9%. But here, this was determined by exactly one point. And there's a lot to talk about here. I mean, you look at it and you can say, well, look, similar to what Warnock did in the greater Atlanta area, along with Columbus and Augusta and Savannah. He literally, John Ossoff literally ran up the numbers here in the metro. I mean, he did a little bit worse than what Warnock did, but he still got it done. Like, look here, right here in DeKalb County, Warnock got 84 point something percent in DeKalb County. Ossoff just did a little bit worse than him, 83%, but still, he really performed really well in this area here. Cobb County, Gwinnett County, Fulton County, where Atlanta is. Gwinnett County did 60% here. Newton County, a little bit closer, but still, he was able to run it up. Henry County, south of Atlanta, 61%. If you go over here now to Columbus and Muskogee County, he got 62% of the vote. And here in Macomb and Bibb County, 62.5%. And over in Chatham County here in Savannah, Georgia, 59.6%. And these were the places where the Democrats needed to perform really well. If you look here at these smaller counties too, this is a big thing for the GOP to look at. This is somewhere where they really need to improve, because this is central rural Georgia. This is more of a rural area where it's actually pretty close, the votes here. Like here, Washington County, this was 51.2% to 48.8%. That's close.
Yep.
You look here, Jefferson County, 54 to 45%. I mean, these are close. Baldwin County, 51.8% to 48.2%. I mean, these are actually close here in these three right here. And that's where GOP, they need to do better here. I mean, plus, you kind of have to run up your numbers here in these smaller counties like Coffee
Right.
County. I mean, you could have done a little bit better here. You could have done a little bit better here in Lowndes County. And I think that's what the thing is. I mean, when you look at it in probably past elections, the Republicans were probably running it up in these rural southern counties, but this time around the margins were a little bit narrower, and I think that's a problem here.
Right. Definitely what we allude to in terms of changing demographics.
Yep, exactly. And that's the thing too. I mean, the future of politics is going to be, how can you run a campaign that's going to get a lot of people out to vote and where they're going to vote? If you can get a majority of the population out to listen to who you are as a candidate and to make them reflect with your campaign, you're going to do well. And the Democrats knew right away that the suburbs were going to be in play, and they did extremely well. If you look at this map here, just look at all the big cities, circle the big black circles here on this Georgia state map, and you can see All around Atlanta, they did extremely well in the surrounding counties, also in Columbus, in Macomb, in Augusta, and Savannah. And that right there are the population bubbles where where they did extremely well, and that's where they're going to continue to keep winning seats.
Absolutely agreed there. Well, then that's going to sum it up for our episode of the Georgia runoffs. The Democrats are now in control of the Senate, and we have an exciting 4 years to judge what Democrats do.
Exactly. And you know what? You can look ahead again and you can see maybe we'll look back at this election and say, okay, you're going to see a lot of the same kind of tactics, I'm assuming, for next election, one more strategy based for next election. But for Republicans, this election was somewhere where you really needed to come in and you had to win this in order to keep the Senate, but instead you lost both races. So this is going to be a big turning point for the Republican Party and also for the Democratic Party in Georgia. Are they going to continue to dominate politics down here with the Democrats winning in 2020 big, or are the Republicans and the GOP going to turn around for the next elections also with the House races in 2022. So there's a lot to be seen here, and we're just going to wait and see how it's going to be. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Please follow us on Twitter. That's Peace and Chaos P1 on Twitter. We're going to have that in the description down below. We're also going to be having some more shows coming out for you guys. So please go check those out. Hit like, subscribe, and comment down below again. This is the Peace and Chaos program. See ya.
Peace.